baie verander, maar ek sien dat ons nog die karakter het van plan. Dat ons nog nie die karakter het van sê, van Somerset of Manus of wat Kaapstad nie, wat eintlik wat weer. It's very important for us to marry development, sustainable development, and how we do and the structure of that. Het is baie belangrijk vir die toekoms van Spatial om te ontwikkel, maar ook dat inwoners gelukkig is. Dit is dat ons inwoners wil deel maak van elke ontwikkelingsplan. As we will ontwikkeling, there's a planet, and this is one of the plans that we present to you today, our plan for the future in Stakeholder. So heartily welcome team from the Environment and Social Advisory Services. So you will present us, talk to us, and we've got our people from Struisbaai here in the Tucson Center, and we've got also people listening to us. So heartily welcome in Stakeholder. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tracy, and our people for setting up this meeting for today. Heartily welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Now, I have to remember, one of you guys will need to move the slide. So, yeah, my name is Ted Davis. I'm with CS, and then Tommy is a planner, and Rudevan helps us with the public participation. And what I've got is a few slides just to take us back to when we first started this project, because it has actually been delayed as a consequence of the lockdown and COVID. Next slide, Tommy, and just explain what our objective was. Our objective really was to look at, that's the study area, so it's the harbour precinct, the Struisbaai to harbour precinct, and we're developing we say a master plan, but it's really more of a concept plan to determine how we can optimize the development in this area and work with the natural assets that are there. So I'm a coastal ecologist, so I look a lot at the natural assets and the opportunities and constraints presented by that. And then we've got town planners, facilitators and architects on the team to look also at the urban context and the architectural responses that would be suitable. Thanks, Tommy. So we've gone quite far down the track. We finished the first few phases. There was an inception phase. We then actually did reports on the environmental context. So we looked at environmental opportunities and constraints. We then did reports on the planning, similarly to determine what planning constraints there might be, things like rezoning, servitude, etc., and the situation report was prepared on that. We've undertaken a fair amount of stakeholder engagement, as the Mayor alluded to earlier on in the process, with various stakeholders, and that is Duiker's responsibility, but of course that was also put in abeyance with the lockdown. And then we prepared a draft concept precinct development plan that provides a layout of the preferred development options. So we've brainstormed internally, we've had a number of internal workshops, we've discussed with various stakeholders, we've looked at the existing spatial development framework, the natural setting, the built environment, and we've put all of the stuff into a pointy pot and come out with some ideas that we believe would optimize the assets that are actually offered by the study area. And so we are now at that draft concept stage, and our next stage would be to take that plan and to actually provide it in a little bit more detail, and then also to provide a report. And then the last outcome is what Rudevan and his partner will be doing, and that is to look at a high level economic analysis of the development options. So that work hasn't been done yet because we don't have clear development options and interventions, and part of today is to get feedback from people and have this information available so that we can comment, because we are experts in our respective fields, but we don't live in Struisbaai. We don't know the area as well as the people in this room and the people watching online, and so we would really appreciate your thoughts and inputs on our ideas to see how we can change those ideas, modify what we think, because ultimately this is a study that isn't done for us, it's done for you, so it's very important that we get that feedback from everybody. So the team, I think that's the next slide, we've kind of spoken to that support team with various expertise from GIS and land use planning to environmental, economics and architecture. Philip would have been here today, but unfortunately he's not well, so he wasn't able to make it. But we ran through everything yesterday. We feel fairly confident that you can deal with all your questions at the end of the presentation. So that's what we've completed to date. Reviewed the environmental settings and did a situation report. Did a strategic planning overview, opportunities and constraints report, and then held meetings with various parties to try and understand the institutional setting as well as the economic setting and any ideas and thoughts that people have that might work in that area. Thanks, Tommy. I don't want to take too long over this. So before preparing the actual plan, we produced an options analysis report. So we looked at various options based on the information that we gathered, both on environmental planning, institutional, economic, and so on. And we bounced those ideas around, and we identified these as primary assets. So and we needed to work with those assets. The beach and coastline, obviously an important asset. The caravan park, a critically important asset for the area. The harbour, the land adjacent to the harbour, some of the public open spaces that could be further developed, and then the interface between the main road and associated development opportunities. So we have the coastal area that has opportunities, but the main road also has opportunities, and we teased out how we interface those two quite different areas within the town. And so we produced a plan which will ultimately provide a set of planning guidelines, recommendations for developable areas within the precinct and some concept layouts, recommendations for appropriate commercial and tourism activities within the coastal zone and the area. So the thinking behind this project is as a facilitator for future development, and we'll also hopefully unpack some mechanisms by which those developments can be facilitated by private sector investment, public-private partnerships, and various other models that are available. And then also to look at traffic flow, because traffic is a critical issue over the Christmas season, and how we can resolve some of the problems and issues that arise as a result of traffic flow and people trying to launch boats all at the same time. And then lastly, with Philip's input, looking at the architectural responses of the urban traffic of Struisbaai with what we can, or what we suggest along the coastline, and try and improve that built environment setting as well. Thanks, Tommy. So I've kind of probably mentioned the public participation, but what we want to do now is present to you the Struisbaai Precinct Development Plan, and that's the objective of this meeting. But when I say present, we actually want to share it with you. We'll just share with you our ideas and what we think seems to be right based on our respective expertise and the work that we've done. But really, we want to get feedback from you, and there are 2 weeks. I'll post the presentations onto our website, and I think we must post it onto the municipal website as well, so people can download that and look at the information in more detail and interrogate it. And then we provided Rudebaan's contact email address, so please send in comments and thoughts that you have on it, or concerns, issues, and we will incorporate those into an issues and response trail, and we'll incorporate all these other ideas as best we can into the final precinct plan. Of course, they're going to be divergent opinions, and so we'll try and find common ground. And I guess at some point we'll have to make a call on what we think are the best is the best way forward. Okay, so that's the end of that one. Now we've got to work out how to open the other presentation, which I think we can do. I'll find my glasses. let's just minimize that. No, we got to change screen. And let's go that way. Okay. And then I think I'm heading over to you.
Okay, good. My name is Tommy Robert. We've got about 39 slides here. I'm trying to go through this as much as we can. There's quite a bit of information. And you can share it between yourself and everyone. This is just the first stuff of the harbour and the background. Maybe the study area. So the first thing that we looked at and concentrated on was the land use of the area, and there's the land use edges here with the open spaces, which are very important. Open spaces are against the coastline, obviously, and then there's the open spaces more internally. The resort, and we all know where the caravan park is, the resort. Commercial, there's obviously a concentration of commercial here together with this like here, and then along Main Road, you could see a number of rezonings have happened along there for certain businesses to be established along there. But certainly this is the main activity road running through the area. Industry.
Okay, thank you. Industry is the harbour. The harbour is in fact zoned for industrial use. And then we have what we call authority uses. And the authority uses are spread around the city, around the town, and really they're concentrated along the main road as well. And then at the same time, in between that, we have social and civic urban sitting in that position there. And then importantly, we have the destinations, obviously the harbour, and along the coastline in the various positions. And then importantly as well, we have what we call the coastal management line, and that is the line of the 1 in 50, 1 in 20 floodlines, which are very important to take into account in placing any new development within the town. Then the next thing that we looked at is the movement pattern within the town, and obviously the main road is the main movement pattern, and we then have secondary movement patterns which are running at perpendicular to that, and they serve what we call a secondary vehicle routes, and then following with those we have the pedestrian routes as well, pedestrians along the coastline and along the road. And then we have some radii here which illustrate from the center of town a 200 meter, a 400 meter, and a 800 meter radius, which is translated into how long does it take to walk that area. And effectively from the center, if you walk for 5 minutes, you get to within that 400 meter radius. And if you were to walk for 10 minutes, you would get to that radius. So very much the study area is within 4 and 5 minutes walk from the town center. And then we've identified what we call our destination nodes. Obviously, the harbour is a destination, the coastline and the beach where the restaurant is at the moment and at the end next to the caravan park and that open space system over there. So we've identified those 3 destination nodes, and then the node in the center we call the civic node. Okay. And then this is just looking at the open space system. How does the town function with its open spaces? And as we said in the beginning, we have this open space system along the coastline. We have the boardwalk, which is a very successful component, which runs on this component of the open space. And then we have these larger open spaces further away from the coast, and then some smaller open spaces here, and a private open space sitting around the town center. Okay, so then we have a map which starts to bring those things together, and we call them spatial informants. And the first spatial informant is your primary structuring route, which is the main road, which runs here, and this is where your main activities and commercial activities should be concentrated, and that's where you have the business zones at the moment. Then you have the secondary structuring routes, which are the ones that are running perpendicular to the primary route. We then have our destination nodes. We have the main destination areas. We have some heritage buildings alongside the main road. We have the management line, the coastal management line, which is important, and then the open space and beaches. So those are the spatial informants that we've used to come up to with our plan. So from there, we're going to move to the stakeholder engagement component, which Ruduan is going to deal with.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. This is in terms of the stakeholder engagement. We identified 2 sets of stakeholders: internal stakeholders, referring to internal to the municipality, and then we talk about officials, the councillors, the mayor, to get a sense of their perspective on what's possible and the constraints and aspirations of the space. And then a set of external stakeholders. Some of you are in the room, but they are the Residents Association, the Cape Agulhas Business Association, some community-based organizations. We spoke with some owners of businesses and tried engaging some government departments also, but the challenge was with COVID-19. We had some scattered feedback, if you like. Then key issues that emanated from these engagements, and this was important because what we wanted to do is get an understanding of what is important to these various stakeholders and help these issues inform what we propose for the precinct. So one of the key issues was that it should improve beach access and enhance the beach experience and the related activities. The caravan site was seen as an important asset and amenity for the municipality and the Struisbaai community as a whole. The beachfront eating establishments are critical components of any proposed development framework. And then also the fact that there's a very limited peak in Struisbaai. So the idea is, how do we extend that peak outside Christmas and the Easter period? Another issue that came up was, how do we induce and incentivize visitors to Struisbaai to stay longer and extend their stay instead of just coming through for a moment and leaving there? There's a need for accommodation to accommodate tour groups and to upgrade the main road as activity corridor. Facilities and activities for the youth was identified as key issues to be factored into any kind of framework, and then also maintain our green and open spaces. Those were the key design informants that our team had to work with in terms of coming up with ideas for the development of the area. This pretty much repeats a lot of economic and tourism potential as tied to some of those interventions. So you will see again, attract visitors outside the peak, incentivize them to stay longer. We need to have hotel accommodations, upgrade the main road, and then also facilities for the youth and maintain the open space as well. I think something, yeah.
You're right. Okay. So now we're going to look at the precinct, what we call the precinct plan, and essentially what we've done is broken the town into a number of little study areas, and we're going to try and focus on those once we've got the tech sorted. Yeah. Okay. Okay, you've gone away. All right, so I'm going to start just a move in a circle, but essentially what we have is the first little precinct that we have here is at the termination of Duiker Street at the beach. There's that open piece of land here, and it's next to the caravan park. So we see that as the first little node. And what we identify for that is for a restaurant on the camping site, not camping, a braaiing area, sitting on that area there, and then on the caravan park in the corner here, that would be the northernmost part of it, is to have a open air restaurant, but also with a smaller component which is enclosed and protected so that it can operate in winter months in the closed area, and then to be far larger for the summer months. We then have the beach area here, which is an important area for recreation in front of the resort, as it were, and then coming along with that, the boardwalk, and we see the boardwalk being a major opportunity to be not only extended, but to have a number of facilities on that boardwalk, such as pop-up shops in season, and that can be quite an exciting area to make the flow of activity along this important coastal belt much more exciting for the visitor. And we then come to the harbour, and obviously at the harbour there's a proposal for a hotel, and there are the fishing facilities which must work well, and they serve the fishing community, the local and the tourist fishermen. And then with that is the two parking areas, and this is where one of the main issues has arisen, in that the parking in season is regarded as quite a serious problem in terms of congestion, and it's the parking should be concentrated on both the trailers and the cars, and they should really be parking in that big parking area rather than just the normal tourists coming to the beach or to the harbour. And we believe that as little parking for the public should be provided along the coastal zone, and that parking should be pushed more inland to be out of the way of the coastal zone, as it were. So we've dealt with the restaurant at the harbour here, and we then come to the commercial zone. And the commercial zone has huge potential to be a far greater and more important activity area. And we've looked at other nodes in other towns, Hermanus and Kalk Bay, and we'll get to that a little bit later, where you have a town centre which operates in a far more robust manner. One of the things that's important about this commercial strip is everyone that goes to Cape Agulhas drives through this town, and we need to capture them and let them do something and let them spend some money while they're in Struisbaai. So there's that huge volume of tourists moving up and down the road, and they need to be caught up in some other way. So then, just in terms of parking, what our thought is that to have parking possibly in this open space, removed from the coastline, and to have some form of either a tractor with a wagon on the back, or to have a tuk-tuk service, but some kind of service that rotates through the village and moves people around from a parking area to whatever destination they're going to on that particular day. And we then get to the last thing here, and that is the use of the caravan park area. And we believe that there should be some alternative type of activity there as well, in the form of self-catering accommodation that can be rented and that can be used throughout the whole year. At the moment, you have a caravan park, which is a large tract of land in a very strategic and important component of the town, and it's only being used for 3 weeks of the year. We believe that it should be used in a far more productive manner, making it possible for tourists to use it throughout the rest of the year. And so there's a proposal to have some form of housing, but we'll get to more detail of that. So now we're going to go to the individual precincts, and I'm going to hand over to Ted for the first couple, and then I'll take the...
Okay, that's good. So I'll have your pointer as well. So I'm going to talk about the coastal stuff because that's my expertise. So one of the requirements was facilities for people to go braaiing and to just relax and gain access to the coastline. It's also very important in terms of the Coastal Management Act. One of the principles underpinning that act is the need to ensure equitable and fair access to the coastline and the resources it offers. And so our idea is to use this area, which is relatively low-lying, but it's quite a large piece of land, as a picnic and recreational area, so that people can use it to go and have braais, and it's open for, and it's free to use. It's a public amenity, and it provides a facility and an amenity to people who otherwise might not be able to afford to go to more expensive areas. And just the next slide, and these are just some of the, so what we'll do is we'll show the detail of each area and then some of the ideas related to that. So these are just examples of urban parks that could be developed in that area. So it's braais, it's an urban park, it's facilities, so provide facilities for braaiing so that actually it's safe and there's a reduced fire risk, but then also provide other amenities for kids to play around, play a little park and so on. So that would be a public amenity in that area because it's pretty underutilized at the moment. It's just it's used as an informal parking area presently. We believe that the restaurant needs to move to this locality, and there are a number of reasons for that. But perhaps the most important reason is at the present locality, that restaurant is situated in front of what is called the Coastal Management Line, which Tommy was talking about. And the Coastal Management Line is, again, a requirement of the Integrated Coastal Management Act, and it's been prepared for the Overberg district, all the districts of the Western Cape, in fact, and it talks to 1 in 10 high-risk zone, 1 in 20 medium-risk zone, and 1 in 50 low-risk zone, and that's linked to sea level rise, storm surge events, and the risk that developments in that zone actually are confronted with. So in the 1 in 10 year, it's likely that there will be a storm surge event that would remove infrastructure, and the recommendation is that no solid infrastructure is situated in front of that particular setback line. So in terms of the Coastal Management Act, the location of that facility there is not compliant with that act. So our recommendation is to move that restaurant to that locality so that it also services the caravan park, this amenity, and then the self-catering units that are recommended there. And the next slide just shows, was there not a slide of, oh, sorry, that's it, yeah. So it's a casual, we're thinking two things, that there will be a restaurant located behind that high-risk zone, which would be brick and mortar with ablution facilities and a restaurant that can be used in winter. We're mindful of the strong winds that blow for a lot of the time, And then in the peak seasons, it would have an open deck spill out area as well that would serve when there are peak seasons, and that you can actually provide additional seating to the restaurant. And these are some ideas of restaurants like that we researched. So let's talk a little bit more about the accommodation. This is a very big piece of land, a very important asset along the coastline, but also the feedback we received is that camping and caravanning is important. It's important in Struisbaai, and it's an important amenity that people would not like to see disappear. So the idea then is to actually have this area as camping ground, and these areas as self-catering units. Thanks, Tommy. Next slide. And these are some ideas of the type of architecture we recommend. Something in the Cape vernacular that blends in with this part of the world, very much like Lange Zand at Struisbaai, that sort of architecture, and that's just an example of the caravan park, but something that would lift the visual attractiveness of that area and would be fully integrated with the natural setting and the coastline. Thanks, Tommy. And so the idea here is that you would have the caravan and camping area in that high-risk zone, because that's a legal activity. One is able to do that because there's not a lot of built infrastructure, and that's already existing, and that's an important amenity. Then to actually have single-story accommodation, self-catering accommodation as in the middle of the zone, and then actually double-story accommodation behind that. This accommodation would be self-catering, and it would be either 2-star or 3-star, so that it can be affordable. This height over here is just to give you an indication of the height of the proposed Admiral apartments, which are 3 to 4 story, which we don't feel is appropriate. So the maximum height here is 2 stories, probably 8 or 9 meters, with a low roof that reduces any visual intrusion. We understand that people who live behind the caravan park will be impacted by this particular suggestion because of their views. We feel that this asset is completely underutilized at the moment, and it's really the anchor of this precinct that needs to be developed. Then, as Tommy mentioned, we'll be recommending a boardwalk, building on the good idea of a boardwalk that actually links the harbour precinct all the way along the coastline to this public amenity and the restaurant. And in certain areas, the boardwalk would be broadened in those particular areas, so it would be a wider boardwalk, and these red dots indicate the pop-up nodes. So over peak seasons, within that boardwalk will be integrated an electricity supply, so someone can come along with their hot dog stand, plug that in there, pay a certain fee, and actually sell hot dogs along the boardwalk or ice creams or whatever, just during the peak season, so it doesn't require a lot of capital investment. Thanks, Tommy. And that's just some ideas. So these are examples of a boardwalk that is actually more than just a place to go from A to B, but it's actually a place to sit and relax and enjoy, buy yourself an ice cream, or little curios and so on, little quick bites to eat and so on. So that uses that entire stretch of coastline as an additional amenity. You're swimming at the beach, you can pop up, get an ice cream or grab a hot dog, or just chill on the boardwalk. And then there's a nice piece of land there. We've looked at the vegetation. The vegetation is fortunately well protected and not critical biodiversity, so we can do an appropriate form of development. Again, it's a windy area, and we are aware of that, but some sort of amenity, an open-air auditorium that again talks to the point raised about something for the youth, where you can have small music concerts, other activities that take place in this area. And next slide shows so if we think Kirstenbosch and the concerts that we have at Kirstenbosch and so on, but obviously at a smaller scale. It needn't be a rock concert. It could be classical music or other types of events, a wine tasting event, fish tasting event, or whatever. So that would be a utilization of that space and probably mainly over the peak season, but again, it extends the use of that coastline longer than just that Christmas peak. Thanks, Tony. I think it's back to you now on the harbour. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so back to the harbour, and there are a couple of things that we feel are important here. Some okay, okay, thanks very much. So we've got some the proposal for some vending stations and curio vending sites along the waterfront. A harbour can be a really exciting place for tourists to visit and for children to enjoy the activities of the harbour. There's always something happening at a harbour, boats coming in, fish being cleaned, etc., etc. So it's a really an important attractive node for the town. The hotel site, this was rezoned many years ago. The proposal for the hotel still stands, and I think that will bring a lot to Struisbaai to have a hotel here again. And then there's the parking area. We've spoken about the parking area, which should really be dedicated to trailers behind cars to make it easy for the fishermen to put their boats in and out of the water. Just some shots of a harbour, and we've chosen Kalk Bay because it's close to where we live. And Kalk Bay is always a bustling area. There's always some activities happening there. It's picturesque, and there's lots of things to do. A restaurant at the harbour is always a great idea. Kalk Bay's got lots of fishing boats. We've got some fishing boats in the harbour here as well. And to have a live fish or a lucky fish type of activity at Hout Bay. You've got Mariner's Wharf, and so there are all those activities that need to be encouraged to be at that harbour area. Okay. Probably one of the more difficult sites within the town to try and stimulate is the town centre, and the centre doesn't have the traditional town square that one traditionally has in a town, and so we're proposing that we actually have a town centre on the site, which has the little church, the historic church building, and that's kind of a magnet or an attraction that automatically is required for a place to be a town centre. So a central square in that area there. And then the proposal is to encourage, by rezoning, development along both sides of this is the main road running through, for both sides to be rezoned for mixed uses, and traditionally that would be some shops or commercial space on the ground floor, with opening up onto the street so that you have an active street frontage, and then to have residential above that. And so our proposal is on the seaward side, there's the coast over here, to have double-story mixed-use buildings in this area here, and to have three-story mixed-use buildings in this area. And if we go to the next slide, just to show what that can look like. This is in Manus, the town square. There's an attractive thing. This is again coming back to Kalk Bay, where you have your mixed-use buildings, your restaurants and shops on the ground floor spilling out onto the pavement. On the Struisbaai main road, we've got a very nice wide pavement area, and then with residential above, completing that scene. And then the next slide, we've got a little section which would show those various activities. So you've got the current road, which can be upgraded with landscaping on the sides. and then we've got a very wide pavement spaces on both sides, and that's where the buildings can be. So on the northern side, one can have a 3-story buildings with the top penthouses looking out towards the sea, and on the seaward side having a 2-story mixed-use building in that way. So yeah, you actually get a little urban street being able to be motivated and supported and encouraged by the municipality in terms of this plan. Okay, so the issue of parking is one of the critical issues that we've given quite a bit of thought and attention to. And at the moment, as I understand it, congestion with people coming to the beach in this area in the holiday season is quite hectic, and there's just cars everywhere. And that needs to be controlled. And the best way of controlling that is to actually take the cars out of that environment where we don't believe the cars belong, and to put them in other areas around town where they can be out of the way, and then to have a mobility system running between those parking areas for people to be able to have a fun ride. There are fun rides all over the show. We've got Stanford with its tractors, and we've got Franschhoek with its wine buses, and then various other things. Tuk-tuks running around, and you've got these kind of buses in my city in Cape Town. So having a bus service in season to move people around the town and to take them to the various attractions which are spread along the coastline and which are also concentrated at the town centre. And in that way promoting easy movement through the town. Okay, and then just the park and ride system where you park in one place and ride to another. It's not a new concept. And then also catering for and having a special area where your boats with trailers can go and park and be in relative close proximity to the harbour. They need to be accommodated near the harbour. Okay, so that's the end of my story, and I'm handing over again to
people from my side. We also did the tourism and economic development component for the project. So we're just going to unpack some of the ideas that we had that we'd like to share and that we'd like your feedback on for us to further develop the annual plan. So the opportunities, again, there is the opportunity to make Struisbaai a beach and harbour destination of choice. The key challenge is how do we rally around what we have at the moment, both in the private sector and the public sector. Develop new products that are culturally appropriate, promoted through festivals and events, looking at an annual calendar of events for Struisbaai. How do we stretch out that peak beyond the traditional Easter and Christmas period? And also expand facilities to promote cultural heritage and to articulate the history of the space. For example, the stuff that was proposed earlier on around an event space in terms of the open space where they can have events and functions. And then what is also being proposed is consider the relocation of the Cypric Museum to Struisbaai in terms of it being more appropriate along the coast. What we've done is we spoke with quite a number of business people in the town. We spoke with the business association. We looked at the economic analysis and studies and the reports and strategies for the town, for the municipality, for the district. So what we're proposing here is really fitting within that kind of overarching framework. The scale, whether it's 300 or 250 or 200 tables, that's the secondary issue. The issue is for us to focus and to explore, is a beachside restaurant with tables of that size during a peak can be scaled down to that. Is that a feasible option? So the idea is to focus on that, and we're proposing that you actually do have a facility like that. You have a harborside restaurant with 150 tables. Again, the issue of scalability, the pop-up vendors that have been proposed, and then also a multi-purpose space for events. Again, the scale can vary quite considerably, and it doesn't have to be what is represented here. For the caravan, there's a lot of detail on this slide. The information is in the present that will be sent through to you that you can access. But essentially for the caravan site, you'll see here we're talking about 20 such collective caravans, salaries for 2-star and salaries for 3-star. The idea is really not to compete with the private sector either. The idea is to complement the private sector, because one of the key imperatives is how do we strike a balance between public and private working together in terms of stimulating economic development, coupled with the sense from the municipality of how to increase its revenue sources. So next slide, please. Additional opportunities are, a fish market at the harbour, vending stations. Here we have the accommodation for the beach, the 100-bed hotel, a 50-bed hotel, and then opportunities around the parking management. Given that you saw all these kind of opportunities potential for individual entrepreneurs to scoot around to collect and ferry people from the parking spaces to the main strip. Some more slides. Okay, that's it. In terms of the presentation, I think what we'll do now, we'll now take any questions, clarifications, comments, insights, your views on all of this, and I will facilitate that. Just to note, all of this are being recorded, so there is a record of it for yourself to reflect and go back on, and then the inputs that you provide, we will then use as a team to refine and to come up with a revised framework. Okay, for those people who are online, we recognize you're not able to ask questions, but we do have the facility where you can email myself at rudovan.orange@gmail.com with your questions, with your comments. Those will be collated and that will be incorporated. That will also be part of the record of engagement. So there's a fairly transparent process for people to see what they have been commented on and how that has been addressed. So I don't know if there's any questions from the floor. We have a roving mic, is it? Yes. Questions, comments, clarifications? So there's a question, can I ask the municipality if you want to comment on that? Thank you, Ted. Any other questions, comments from the floor?
Okay, apparently my first response wasn't heard, so maybe just to repeat that, sorry for the people who are actually here. Yeah, this is a long-term plan that we are busy compiling for the municipality. It's going to tie in with our spatial development framework. So at the moment, we're just looking at the concept plan. We want to get people's comments on it and see how people feel. It obviously involves more than just municipal land, so it's not just the type of plan that you can go ahead and implement. It is something that, you know, when the community agree on it and people like the direction it's going, you know, then it's something that could be implemented over many, many years, depending on budget, depending on the private sector input. Thanks.
Do we have any other questions, comments from the floor or from the audience in the room? Okay, so the question from the floor was, or the comment from the floor was that the local community do not like high-rise buildings, more especially not on the caravan park. And that's the comment. That comment is noted, and that will have to be factored into the development and the response. And then the second was a question in terms of how many caravan sites at the moment, or there at the moment, like what we have. I'm not sure if that is the 160 on the typical site or on the site at the moment, but we do have the details of how many are on the site. But we can also probably half from the team. It would be half. Right now. Yeah. The challenge, one of the key challenges that the team had to contend with is you have a very strategic asset that are fairly underutilized for most of the year. And how do one make more optimal use of that site? And by the sentiment or the proposal, if by placing more of the accommodation units on the site, you can potentially extend the season for visitors and then a greater variety of accommodations that are being made available. Is there any more other comments? Anybody else? No? Nothing coming through online? No? There we go.
Is that okay? So the question's around the parking, and the gentleman saying that the one area, and I think you're referring to this area over here next to the caravan park, is presently used peak season for parking. Quite a lot of people park there, and I think it's this site that is the church's land. Yes. So the thinking around the parking is both in terms of the congestion over the Christmas season, but your biggest asset and your biggest attraction is this coastal strip. And to be using that to put big metal things in the way, which are motor cars, and not using it as an amenity is not a good use of a very good resource. So that's why there's a lot of open space. We were told this open space here is particularly important to these residents because they use it a lot for going for walks, and there's some small game and so on there. So the idea is during those peak seasons to actually have the park and ride. But I think the point we must capture is even in this particular, this is not quite the right slide. Let me go back to that slide that shows the detail of the picnic site. So just bear with me. I think it's the first slide, yeah. So what we could do, Rudiva and Berry, we could actually integrate within that amenity some parking as well. So out of season, if you've got some hard surfacing, that could be used for parking. And then in peak season, it transforms into with bollards that get installed, so vehicles can't go back in there. So over the peak season, but for local residents, then you can actually go and park there, take a walk on the beach. So that's something we could do. Yeah. So if there's okay, that's when people going to the beach traditionally have a brine on. I think that's something we must pick up with those communities, because if the request for these sorts of facilities actually comes from them. So there might be a bit of conflict here, but that's a good point. And we could try and make it dual purpose, especially because we have this big peak season. Yeah. Yes, I knew we'd get more questions. Yeah. Yes. So the comment is again linked to parking and the fact that it's only a problem for, let's say, a month of the year. For the rest of the year, it's not a problem. And I think it's reasonable that local residents don't want to be inconvenienced for 12 months because of 1 month. And that there could be an idea of parallel parking. I mean, we spoke about using these pavements. There is a very wide, I mean, it's a very wide servitude. So the option is to look at the potential for parkings along that main route that goes through there as parallel parkings. And again, maybe those spaces could double up over the Christmas season as spillover restaurant seating, that sort of thing. But for most of the year, it can be used for the convenience of local residents. So thanks. We'll look into that as well. That's quite feasible, I think. We also thought some towns and so on. I used to live in Grahamstown with Grahamstown Festival. They then changed some of the roads into one-ways so that you improve the traffic flow and so on. But I know, having come from a small town, it's like a nightmare because you're so used to going your particular route, and now suddenly you realize you're going the wrong way in the street. You know? So that was something we looked at, but I think moving the parking areas away will hopefully help with some of that traffic flow. Any other questions? This. Okay. Okay. So just for people online, so the comment is that this area more for parking and perhaps for dry areas because they don't take up a lot of space, and rather use this area that was allocated for the auditorium as more of a youth facility, skate park, something like that. But then the point around wind, you were saying, I mean, the coastline's very windy. Okay, so is that a limitation, you think, for this auditorium idea, the strong winds? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you're just talking about a gentle embankment or something, and wind is an issue for sound quality. You know, if there's music or something, it really affects the sound quality. Okay. Thanks for that. And then another comment there. Yeah. Okay, so the comment or the statement is that there are areas, and I think, Tommy, we've got that in the report, there are certain areas within the town that are zoned for higher buildings. The idea here in the central precinct area was to actually, I don't think it's 3 stories, or do you recall at all if there are 3-story zoning schemes? Yeah, so the suggestion is in that main central area that if you're on the seaward side of the road, you'd apply for a double story, and if you're on the landward side of the road, you could apply for a triple story. And that would provide some densification, and then like at Kalk Bay, there'd be restaurants or shops or something on the lower level, and then accommodation on the 2 levels up. And I think your point was that it's not we must be careful, it's not a blanket statement about high-rise buildings, but I think your comment was specific to the caravan park area in terms of height. Okay. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so I'll just summarize that quickly. So what you're saying is that obviously the land falls, and we actually haven't got a transect line in there, so that so a 3-story building here in some ways is higher than a 3-story building there because of the fall of the land, and so it's actually the height above ground level that's important because the contours drop down like that. Okay. So maybe a transect line across there or something to show that. And so you wanted to put a first. Yeah. Yes, so the comment is that in this area, it is more level, and you're quite correct. So if we just look at this coastal management setback line, the land here slopes a lot more. So it is higher here, whereas in this area, the land is much more level, and that's why that flood line is further back, because this area is level. So one would need to look at the impact of those taller buildings there would be a greater impact, I think, than taller buildings there, is the concern. That's the fair summary? Thanks. there was another hand. Yes, sir. Which is at that point. Okay, yeah. The camera is, no, this camera is not facing us. It doesn't matter, okay. All right, so we need to take those subtleties into account. Yeah. But of course, people would have to apply for relaxation, and the municipality would have to either, and there'll be the opportunity for objections and so on if anyone's applying for increase in height. Any other questions or comments? Are we sure? It's not the last opportunity, but we do encourage your feedback, please. I mean, it's quite a lot of information to digest. And if you've got other thoughts, then send an email, and we'll incorporate all these comments into our notes. But send us some emails if you've got, and especially people online, to send stuff in writing so that we can then respond to that in the report, and also not just respond to it as like, "Oh, thanks for your comment," but to actually incorporate that thinking into a revised plan. And we will make this, and I think we need to send an email to the people, the stakeholders we have on our database. And also, I mean, we should actually have a slide up of our contact details, but we haven't, unfortunately. But I think if you just Google coastal and environmental services, you'll find our website quite easily, and we'll have this presentation loaded by Monday for people to download, or maybe by tomorrow. And then we have circulated Rudevon's email address on the Facebook page. Yeah. Okay. And if people aren't sure, they can always send you comments to Tracy, and then she would forward them on to us as well. Okay. Can I hand over to you now?
Okay. Maybe just to conclude, yeah, as was indicated, yeah, if you could please provide us with your comments. We will also make these documents available on our own website, so if anybody wants to download them. And I'm sure, Doreen, you've got a list of everybody that is here. We can also email it to you if you would like. So yeah, please, I'd like to encourage you. Please give us your comments, give us your feedback. And, also to the public out there, please also just let us know what you think and give us an indication. So to maybe just conclude this session, I would just like to express some thank yous, specifically to CES for the work that you've done. I know this has been a very challenging project because the timelines are completely thrown out by COVID. Not to mention the fact that I think some of the ideas that we had in the beginning and now have also obviously been affected by the pandemic. So thank you very much for all your hard work. Thank you to everybody that's here this morning, stakeholders and ward committee members. And thanks also to our councillors that are here and our officials. Special thanks to the strategic services team and the IT department that's actually managed to make it possible to actually have a public meeting and stream it at the same time. Just maybe to the public, I know on the Facebook comments there have been a few issues about sound during the meeting, but please bear in mind this is the first time that we're actually doing it like this, and it's actually working in the sense that we really are reaching a lot of people, but we know we do have to just look at a few issues relating to the sound. So thank you so much for your patience. We really appreciate it. So yeah, with that, just thank you very much to everybody.